Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video I'm doing my overview of live letter number 89. This was the part 1 preview for patch 7.4, and it was a doozy. I mean, the title of the video is gonna, honestly, it's all you really needed to see, but this was one of the most exciting part 1 live letters we've had in a while, because it felt the most reflective of things people have been asking for a very long time. Again, title of the video, very, very apparent that that is the case, but let's go through the live letter. Now, I will say it did start with something that doesn't feel like listening to feedback. It's not perfect. They started with a quick reminder of patch 7.38. It's not unusual for us to get these, but this is weekly limit on Savage being removed, the Esther for the Tombstone weapon being made available with the 24-man tokens, and they're also adding a furnishing to the Return to Evilise Alliance raids. It's basically just the... Oh, there's no picture of it here in the translation, which I'll go back and do in a second. But it is basically the Evilise Chronicles artwork as, you know, a wall-mounted painting. So just something cool for a little bit. Of course, as soon as I start recording, Ivy decides she wants to use the litter box right here. The weekly limit on Savage thing, like, people have been complaining that it unlocks way too late. I've been everyone. That's like the first bit. So like after this, the feedback portion went pretty well. But this one bit they really need to work on in the future because this takes way too long, and everyone agrees that it takes way too long. Speaking of which, I am using unofficial translations on the Final Fantasy XIV Discord by Aluna Minori and Miuna. So these are not official statements from Square Enix. It's translations of things they've said on stream, which means, you know, you always have to be a little weary of just certain interpretations. But on top of that, thank you, Aluna Minori and Miuna, for your hard work. We use them every time that we're doing these translation overviews. So patch artwork, awesome. By the way, they went full-blown Arcadian here. We have some of our new contenders at the bottom as well, and what looks to be our title match at the top. So I can't wait to see how this wraps up. I've really liked the Arcadian. Seeing Hector at the bottom makes me a little nervous. I don't know if it's just because he's been one of our opponents. The only reason I say nervous is because we're under the impression that everything happening in the Arcadian is not entirely for show, and that the plot line of it is not just a written plot line where everyone's actually like alive at the end. And I'm really hoping that doesn't end up being that, because I don't want to find out that there was no actual plot, or that the plot for the Arcadian was entirely fabricated because of as a wrestling reference where all the plot lines are fabricated, of course. But yeah, Into the Mist. The title is interesting, and we'll get into some MSQ bits here. Mist is a big part of Final Fantasy IX, obviously, with the expansion having been Final Fantasy IX themed up to this point. The Mist envelops the entire, well, Mist continent in Final Fantasy IX, which is where the base game takes place, with Alexandria, Treno, Lindblum, all those locations. And it's largely responsible for all the fiends and monsters that are in the area, and is also used as a Genesis creation material with that of the black mages that are made in Final Fantasy IX. It's a core like piece of the story. Now, it is also present in Final Fantasy XII, and it acts as like a really high etheric density thing, although that's Mist with a Y. But it seems like we're going to be diving into that a little bit. And we also got the patch date immediately. They had to give us the patch date immediately because they're doing things a little bit different this time. So we know the patch is Tuesday, December 16th. That's when we've all been predicting. That was the on-pattern date, so this is an exactly on-pattern patch. And the reason why they're announcing it is because they are delaying Savage until after the holiday season. So instead of it being 1 week, which would have been December 23rd, they're delaying it 2 additional weeks to a total of 3-week delay until January 6th. Now, I had levied this option and said I thought it was unlikely because they've shown no propensity for it in the past. And catering specifically to an audience that actually, you know, has those holidays just didn't seem like something I thought they would do at all. But they are. So Savage, we will have a ton of extra time to get Tombstone gear, a ton of extra time to study the normals, and very likely, based on their statements just below, they will not be upping the difficulty to match the World First Raiders. I don't think you can do that. It doesn't really make sense. The majority of people doing raids are not World First Raiders, so it doesn't make sense to make it just harder for them. One game in particular does like doing that. I'm kind of glad we're not in that boat. So we will probably mow through this one a little bit faster for a final tier. The DPS checks with all that extra gear shouldn't really be that severe. But it should mean that if you're someone who usually is used to clearing on week like 3 to 5 or something like that, you're probably going to get your clear closer to a week 1 to 2, depending on your time availability. And then, of course, just some reminders, heavyweight normal, new elegant tone zones of mnemonics, and new craftable gear. That'll all come on December 16th on the release. So you won't have to wait for crafted gear, tomestones, or any of that either, which is another reason why they don't want to delay the whole patch. They don't want to delay these things in particular, which, given there is an ultimate coming, yeah, there's a lot. Like, they just don't want to do that. But yeah, it's funny because January 6th actually has a different problem where people are coming back from vacation and are going back to school and work. So they now have to come back and immediately take off. It's literally like, it's the time of the year is so screwed no matter what you do. Yeah, they're schedule everything for when people already have time off, but they're in theory spending time with their family or like traveling or something. Or you schedule when they're supposed to go back to being responsible people. And it's not that easy to like do that. To like be like, yeah, by the way, I'm just taking an extended break at the start of the year. It's rough. Like, no matter what, it's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. But that's what's happening with the normal and the savage tier. Now, for new main scenario stuff, it looks like there's going to be a bit more of a focus on, this looks like Treno, another location in Final Fantasy IX, and we're meeting a new character as part of this entire thing. Now, we don't know if this is a simulation in living memory for Treno, or if this is actually, some sort of connecting factor from living memory to Treno. All we know is they're giving us this device. I don't know if that's a type of regulator or a bomb. I have no idea what they're handing us, but they're handing us some sort of important device that's going to be very important for the new plot line. 7.5 is also packed. We hope you enjoy this new arc, the new story arc. We do also have, more Hildibrand. This looks like a flashback sequence with Hard Boiled, maybe to when he lost his partner. But he has a gun. And then more Hildibrand, even more Hildibrand. That's the best thing I've ever seen. That was great. So yeah, and then, there's one more patch of Hildibrand at 7.5, so we're getting closer to the end of the story there. Then we have the dungeon, the Mistwake. Mistwake, again, we would assume something with whatever happens with the mist. One would assume this is the aftermath of it. But again, it looks to be in the simulation. The big thing here is seeing this dome. Now, it is worth remembering that the main plotline of the 9th is that it suffered a giant electrical storm, and that Alexandria built its dome to escape largely from that in order to protect its citizens. Now, obviously, there is still the sickness from being exposed to all of that electrical ether, which, of course, our trusty Porksies have been helping with. But the other areas, Lindblom, Treno, all of those in theory should have been also engulfed by an electrical storm. So it's very curious to see how this is going to factor in, because I don't know if this is like a data dome that's just kind of projecting it as a simulation in Alexandria. We don't know if that's some sort of actually functional dome of some capacity. It's not entirely sure, but the fact that we're going to living memory is on. What's interesting is living memory is like a piece of like technology that still technically exists on the 9th. So is this just like if you escape living memory and go to the rest of the 9th? Like, that's how it actually looks. A lot of speculation and theory when it comes to what's actually happening. Now, speaking of which, electrical storm, our trial as part of the story, I recognized him immediately. It's Doom Train. So many people may not understand this. Phantom Train is from Final Fantasy VI. Doom Train is from Final Fantasy VIII as an optional summon/guardian force that has to be crafted. Hell on Rails is the name of the trial, normal and extreme, and I have one request. Don't use the Final Fantasy VIII boss theme. Use Man with the Machine Gun. Please. This is your chance, Square. I wanted Man with the Machine Gun in Eden. You have an opportunity now to put Man with the Machine Gun in the raid. That is my favorite Final Fantasy VIII track. This is it. This is the time to add it. I don't care if you do 2 separate music themes. If you do like a phase 1 Final Fantasy VIII boss theme and a phase 2 Man with the Machine Gun, I'll forgive for us not getting it all this time. But yeah, it's really strange. Like, this is going to look really weird to people who don't understand the Final Fantasy VIII reference. But yeah, Doom Train looks really creepy in Final Fantasy VIII. Yeah, it's going to be a time. The boss name is Glazia Laboris, but we have another boss name with that in Circus Tower. Yeah, no, its name is Doom Train. All right. Finally, it feels like we climbed to the top to fight here. And then we have the Arcadian. This is Are You Not Entertained? Perfect setting. Which of the bosses will fight here is a question, but that is one of the new Arcadian arenas. It's a death match with no escape. And of course, from the patch artwork, one of our new contenders as well. We also have this contender who looks like a young Urianger. Funnily enough, they even mention he looks like evil Urianger. He is the main title, like he looks like he's the title fighter. I don't know if it's a situation where the president is technically the title fighter, because Eutrope was the heavyweight champion, then disappeared and came back. And, you know, we're obviously not, I say obviously, we're probably not fighting Eutrope again as part of this. So the president might have just taken the title in a sense, which would totally be a WWE thing that I could see happening. So that's the little Arcadian preview. The new Unreal is Tsukiyomi. I thought Tsukiyomi might be a little too hard for them to do. Really, the meteor phase is the big thing, although the end can get incredibly hectic as well. But no, we have Tsukiyomi's Pain Unreal. That's going to be a step up in difficulty from Seiryu. It's just a harder trial to begin with. How they balance it is going to be a question, but I do expect this to be more difficult than Seiryu. Seiryu is one of the easiest ones you've ever had. So yeah, Tsukiyomi is going to be much harder. Duty support. Now there's a couple of updates here, not just to the dungeons, but to the way duty support works as a whole, especially in dungeons. So they're doing both Zamiel and Ormvale here. That means they may do, what is it? Steel Vigil and Shisui of the Violet Tide, maybe in 7.5. And then we've got all of the dungeons wrapped up, I believe. That's my guess of what they're going to do. But Zamiel and Ormvale this patch. And then we also have a new major change. When you're doing a duty support 4-player dungeon, it is now going to have a new Echo style system where if you wipe on a boss, you get a stack for the next time you fight the boss, which will give you 1 free resurrection. So in the 8-man trials, if you die, you basically have stacks that get expended and you come back to life. Here, it's more like a pity system in a sense, where if you fail once, they're not going to res you, but they'll give you a stack. And then if you were to wipe again entirely, they give you 2 stacks. And then when you clear the boss and go on to the next boss, it resets your stacks to 0. I don't know why they didn't just go with the system from the 8-man trial, but I guess here they want you to kind of fail and learn, which is, in my opinion, better than just giving you free rides through everything. I think it just better supports a new player to actually get punished for failing something and be kind of put in an environment where they're just gradually given a way to get through a little bit more easily, which still kind of encourages them to learn. That might be why they're doing it, especially because of like where this is placed. You know, most of these duty supports start in the very early parts of the game and then gradually get more difficult as players go further and further. But this is only in duty support. This isn't just in all dungeons. So it's only if you're doing it with the NPCs. New frontline map. I had a suspicion we might get one. I was like, they usually do some sort of like more notable PvP update, but we did get the return of Borderland Ruins with its rule changes. We've been getting plenty of support, new maps and stuff for Crystalline Conflict. Series 10 beginning PvP action adjustments and a new frontline map and campaign. We are going to Urkel Pacha because we're going to Warcore Terteth. Now, they didn't tell us anything about how it works. We see several points of interest on the map, one marked with a triangle, a couple of marked with diamonds. We also have what looks to be a point that needs to be captured right here. But you can kind of glance out in the distance and see there's a somewhat different function for the different markers that are out there. You can see like right there, the triangle has like a different type of marker. We don't know what those do and what the point of claiming those points are. But I will say this top point right here, I'm assuming is the center of the map. And it's like, I'm assuming it's King of the Hill. And not like the way we have it in Siege or Seize or on Sol Hakar, where you like click a point and then it's claimed and you don't need to technically fight for it anymore. You fight for the claiming of it and then it accrues points. Not a huge fan of that. I much prefer the way that Seize does it. And this looks like it may be a little bit more in line with that. But we'll get more about that in the Part 2 live letter. We also know that weather will affect the actual map and the mechanics. Snow, polar lights, whatever. So that's one of the chief mechanics of it. I actually, with everything that's happened, I kind of forgot this was even announced. We're getting a new Air Force One map as part of the Gold Saucer. We're getting the Sedalis. That is where Hullbreaker Isle basically is. We're going to be flying through Hullbreaker Isle, doing all the shoots, and then it ends with a boss fight against the Kraken, which I think is hilarious. Now, I say it ends with a boss fight. I don't know that we actually need to kill the Kraken here, like shoot. I'm assuming you have to like shoot projectiles that come out of the tentacles and like slay the individual tentacles and kill the Kraken. But it's certainly more involved than just flying around the Gold Saucer. As it also looks like there's these general points. I like how they just rode through, by the way, and didn't shoot a single time because their score is 0 in all 3 of these screenshots. So then we have the Phantom Weapon update. So we know the new Phantom Weapons will be item level 775. Interesting that they're announcing it already. Now, we know the approximate item level of everything we are going to get. So this is in line with the expectation. This would have been the prediction, but it's interesting that they went out of their way to tell us. They also said a couple of interesting things. Items required for weapon enhancement can be obtained from various duties, including the Occult Crescent. Big complaint about the 7.3x step. These are phantom weapons, and there was no option to do it in the Occult Crescent. Very strange. But that's not the only thing. So, obviously, we expect a one-time step that is this, and then tomestones. They never mentioned the tomes, but that's what we're assuming. But the next statement was interesting. When we consider the weapon series after this one, we might completely change it. This might be the last time for this kind of upgrade system. That is such a vague statement that there's no way to predict what that really means without more clarification. They could mean that there's just like a general upgrade system that you do over time and it's not released in the form of quests. It could mean no more exploration zone forms of progression for it. We don't know. Speculation obviously is going to be abundant with this, but it'll be a long time before this comes to fruition. So I'm not going to worry about it too much for the time being. Occult Crescent is also itself actually getting some decent updates. First of all, we knew we were getting 3 new Phantom jobs this patch. We're also getting 6 more in 7.5x, if I'm recalling correctly. Mystic Knight, Dancer, and Gladiator. It's worth doing a standalone video about what each of those do in Final Fantasy V, as again, this is the reference for it. So there were 3 new Phantom jobs to level, which means we're going to have 3 more stacks of that damage buff to get. And then we have an actual update. They're adding beneficial accessories for Occult Crescent Exploration. 4 pieces for Disciple of War and Disciples of Magic each. So basically, if you hunt these, they'll make you stronger in Occult Crescent, and so you'll have 8 pieces total to hunt down. Character attributes are increased while exploring Occult Crescent, obtained rarely from critical encounters, treasure chests, magic pots, and happy bunnies. So everything in there can potentially drop these new accessories. So while you're working on the Phantom weapons, while you're leveling the new jobs, you also probably want to try to collect as many of these new pieces as possible. And they will almost certainly work in the next Occult Crescent, which is aimed for 7.5. That'll be the northern horn of the island, and we'll have the Fort Tower Magic. We had Fort Tower Blood, then we'll have Fort Tower Magic. And that is also, in case you missed it, going to have multiple difficulties. They will not just be doing a hardcore raid style thing like they did with Fort Tower Blood. As per everyone's feedback, there will be a casually accessible and doable one similar to the Dalriada and Castrum Lacus Litore from the Bozia exploration areas. Then we have the new planets. We are going to be going to Oasis for the next cosmic exploration star. And speaking of Zadnor, kind of reminds me of it. A little more broken apart, but the color scheme definitely reminds me of it. And there was some civilization here that did something that, caused its end, and, now gravity's all messed up on the planet. So, further enhancement to the cosmic tools. Item level 765. That's pretty notably above the current tools, and we are done with crafted tools for the expansion. So these should be considerably better than the crafted tools by the time we get them. Plus, they have the unique effect, which usually helps for things like expert recipes. There are some new rewards. There's new stuff for Cosmo credits, new stuff for new Cosmic Fortune prizes. And then they're adding a sequential mission completion bonus, which is nice. And ruin exploration, which is a brand new thing that is only on this planet. Uncover ancient records pertaining to the planet's past and have them appraised to obtain a range of items. So we have archaeology, in a sense, that will be exclusive to this planet. So just another activity to do to earn rewards on the next planet. You have a few of them here. So it's going to be a little bit more lore focused this planet. We're actually going to be learning about this planet a lot more than I feel like we learned about Fana. So I'm actually really glad to hear that, because I really don't know much about Fana, and there's not much opportunity to learn other than, I guess, quest dialogues and some item descriptions and stuff. But here we go. We have a couple of mounts as well. So I just talked about how much I don't like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 recently. Not a fan of that game. And that is Rex. And no one can tell me that's not Rex from Xenoblade 2. That's Rex. I hope you love the smell of salvage, because that's Rex, and you can't change my mind. And then on the right is the new mount, right there. So, there we go. They said that there's a lot to talk about. Actually, no, I'm sorry. This is them now going on to the next topic. So they took a break after that, and then they had to talk about variant. So that's our variant dungeon. And it doesn't look like it makes sense right now, because it looks like a mix of a Fall Guys collaboration or a Kingdom Hearts world. What it actually is The Merchant's Tale. It is a book. It is a choose your own adventure style book that we are going to be entering and uncovering all the hidden stories that is in there. Look, that's 100 Acre Woods right there. There it all is. So yeah, we can see this is one of our characters that we're going to be adventuring with. She's a gleaner, and she's actually from the Y tribe. She's one of Ishtola's many, many sisters. I don't remember exactly how many she has, but she's one of her many, many sisters. And yeah, so we're going to actually be getting there. And then that's us entering the book, The Merchant's Tale. So you're jumping into the book. So they first spend the bit explaining what variant dungeons are, how the entire system worked throughout all of Endwalker, where you explore the dungeon through the VNC Finder. You pick multiple paths and get to the bosses at the end. And then, you get through. It changes every time as long as you're picking different things. And the goal is to find every individual story and path. Then they explained that, you can do it solo with up to 4 players. And then they explained the rewards, what is Criterion, what is Criterion Savage, the higher difficulty challenge modes. Then they announced what they're changing. So the variant dungeon as a whole is largely the same thing, where you go in and you have the paths and you have to read the lore in order to uncover the secret paths if you're doing it blind. But then we have the revisions. We have the variant dungeon, and then we have variant dungeon advanced. So variant dungeon advanced is no exploration at all. It is 3 separate bosses that you can enter from a central room. You can fight these bosses in any order, and each boss has its own unique loot table. If you defeat all 3 bosses, then you get a bonus reward in that instance. So you can choose to just go in and spam one boss and then leave, or you can try to beat all 3 and then get a bonus reward for completing all 3 in that same instance. If you just prefer to, and then you can also tackle them in any order. You can start with boss 2 and then go to boss 1 and then go to boss 3, or whatever order you want. But we don't know what the rewards are, and that is the elephant in the room. And trust me, it will continue to be the elephant in the room. So, and also, you can do this with 2 to 4 players. You can't do it solo because there are a couple of real mechanics. It is slightly harder than Variant Dungeon. Not by a whole lot, but it is a little bit harder than the original versions of these bosses in the Variant Dungeons. But you can do 2 to 4 players. So you don't need all 4. And so if you just have like one friend you want to do this with, you can. So a little bit of a step up in difficulty. A good way of bridging the gap to get people into a slightly harder content. I do like that. But Criterion is still around. Criterion is largely the same idea, where it's just a boss rush, but now the bosses have to be done in a set order. So you have to beat boss 1, 2, and 3. Reses are limited. They are not banned. They are limited. So we have that duty action that allows you to res. That seems to be returning. And it looks like, other than that, it'll just be, this will be for like, me, like I'm a raider. So like, obviously I'm looking forward to doing the Criterion with this one and learning it. Raise restrictions apply, and you have to beat the bosses in order. See, revival methods are limited, not removed, limited. That's the important bit. Go from one boss to the next. It's not like the new one suddenly appears. It's just 3 in a row. Now, that also means there's no trash in either variant advanced or in Criterion. Little disappointed, the Criterion trash was actually very good, but it was a huge barrier for entry for a lot of people. I don't agree with removing it, just because I, again, did have a really fun time. Some of the toughest healing and some of the tougher challenges in Criterion do actually come from solving each of the trash pulls. But I also don't care that much, enough to really be that upset. I just would have preferred to have had it anyway. And the mechanics are more difficult this time. They're saying between Criterion and Variant Advanced. Criterion is an even further upgrade to the Advanced Variant Dungeon. This is an infographic that explains everything. Now, there's an important detail they literally left out. Variant Dungeon can be used to level. You can enter it at 90, not 91, which is important because Pilgrim's Traverse does require 91, and it can be used to level. So we have another leveling method being added here. There is also a change that is not listed in what is not here. Criterion Savage no longer exists. I agree with that. Most people I know think that Savage, even if we liked the challenge, its existence was largely not useful to the game. It has one of the lowest content clear rates of anything in the game. It has one of the lowest content interest rates of anything in the game. And focusing on Criterion and its rewards, I think takes precedence over the enhanced challenge of Savage. We just got Quantum 40. We're going to be getting another Ultimate in 7.5x as long as they keep the schedule. They did say they were working on one for 7.5x. We have the Savage here. Like, I am okay with the Criterion challenge. The only difference, remember, the only difference between Criterion and Criterion Savage was the bosses had more health and did more damage. The trash had no like AoE indicators and one-shot you with everything. And you had to beat the entire dungeon in one basic pull of 22 minutes, and there was no rezzing at all. But all the bosses and trash mobs were still technically exactly the same as Criterion. So it was like a quasi like dungeon ultimate, but it really wasn't, because you just had to perfect everything in the normal Criterion and then beat it in one pull, and that was the only difference. So I am perfectly okay with Criterion Savage going the wayside in favor of something that bridges the gap. Having Variant Dungeon Advanced is doing something else feedback related. We have long complained there is no good vehicle with which players feel like they can actually gradually increase their skill level. Quantum seemed to be addressing that. Variant Dungeon Advanced kind of seems to be an address to that. And it seems like they're generally addressing that going forward, which means more content for players that are not considered hardcore raiders, but also don't want to just do the basic stuff that's like really easy and simple. So this is, I think, a better iteration, personally, at least on the surface, than something like Quantum, where I'm not convinced that the difference between 15 and 40 is going to be something that they ever explore again, that like individual offering bit. And I have a video about that I actually want to do, because I think it could be very, very interesting how that could be applied in other contents more successfully than it is in Quantum itself. They also tweeted this boss yesterday. I didn't see it until right before this live letter, but that's one of the bosses from inside there. We also got to see some of the rewards. I'd assume these are pieces from the Variant Dungeon, and the set on the left is what we like to call new Limsa Lominsa AFK gear, because people are going to be wearing that, no doubt. We also do see a carpet mount, but here's the problem. There is more, but these are some of the rewards. We really needed him to mention more about this, because rewards were the biggest crux of the entire system. Even Variant Dungeon rewards were not good enough to motivate players to continue to do Variant most of the time. Some of them sell really well because players don't do a lot of Variant. I suppose you could say that that's pretty healthy for the game to have like a pretty, limited scope, but it's only because it wasn't good enough to get people to go back in for Variant past doing the 12 paths. We also know there's individual loot for each of the bosses in Variant Advanced. But what is the individual loot for each boss? Like, why would I spam just boss 3, for example? What's the reason for that? And then for Criterion 2, at the end of it all, they left too many details out. This was one of the biggest problems I had with this live letter, is the number one complaint that people who did Criterion had has not actually been addressed here. Just saying there's more than what we've shown you, but here are some rewards, does not address the chief concern, which, by the way, they acknowledged in the third Criterion dungeon when they increased the rewards for Savage, which was also not the solution. I think regular Criterion needed it more. It's a big question mark, and it's still the biggest apprehension I have about the entire thing. As cool as I think the systems look, much like Quantum, Why? That's what I want to know. So I hope they mention something in the part 2 live letter. So moving on, some new system updates. The title is about to come into play here. So clear green and clear white. I'm not going to lie. I think the clear white actually, I think looks good. The clear green, I think is disgusting. I'm colorblind, so I see it differently than the rest of you, but I will never, ever in my life do that. You would have to pay me to make me use clear green. I hate that. But the clear white, I actually think looks pretty good. I would take clear white over like actual like bright mode or white mode. I think it's a little bit more toned down, so it like kind of works still. And then the strategy board. They didn't go over much, but they have confirmed it is 7.4. And so there's the official markers, and they're going to continue to expand it in the future so that you can do more things with it. But they specifically delayed the raid planner because they were afraid if they released it just as it was, which was finished by their own measure, it would have been dead on arrival. So they listed a bunch of features they were working on adding to it with the sharing and the customization of it. And they're right. If it can't do everything the raid plan app can do, it being in-game does not really matter all that much. It's kind of like the duty recorder. It would fall the way of the duty recorder at that point. And we don't want that. We want this to be a successful tool. PFs being able to post a strategy board code, console players being able to access it in-game. We need all those things. We need it to be successful because it's better for the game than having the raid plan and all the garbage the PF puts up there to make sure you know the strats. I'll say it. The garbage that gets put up in the PF to get you to know the strats. The paste bins, the raid plan links, everything. Get rid of it. Use this, but it'll only happen if it's good enough. If it's not good enough, that's not going to change. And who knows, maybe even if it is good enough, people might be set in their ways. But I'm hoping that we can actually bring change by having the strategy board built into the game itself. Now, one thing that they're adding as well, the command panel. This is really cool. I love this. So it's a new UI element inspired by your feedback. Anything that can be added to a hotbar may be allocated to the command panel. It's comprised of 4 separate panels with 25 slots each. You can put your emotes in there. You can put your crafting macros in there. You can put your mounts in there. You can put your job changes in there. Whatever you want, anything you're flooding your hotbar with right now that is not essential to actually doing combat content, you have an extra 100 slots in this little box that you can put over to the side. So it is an incredibly convenient thing to have. Very much approve of this new UI feature. He says it's a little buggy right now, but they're going to showcase it in the next one. So they show like this is somebody who has all of these on the side. Instead, they can put them all here and then just get rid of all of these. Like, see this mess over here? They can just put it in there and then just tuck it away whenever they don't need it. Curious how it will work with controller, but it'll probably be fine for the controller. So yeah, and then you can pop it up whenever you want. Handy place to keep your shortcuts, your macros, items you don't use every day. Yeah, there's all sorts of things that you can throw in here. So it should be a very versatile piece of UI. And I have a feeling it's just going to be a huge W. Like, people are going to use this for a lot of different things. Now, that's not the biggest feature. Again, title is the most important thing. They're finally doing it. They are unrestricting Glam entirely. Use any gear in your Glamours, irrespective of class, job, or level restrictions. That means you could be a level like 35 monk and using your top weapon if you happen to have it. You can level entirely in your level like 100 Glam if you so want it. So now I will say this, there is still one restriction in place. There is racial restriction. That doesn't surprise me that much because that gear needs to very specifically be reworked for every individual race. So the racial gear that you get as like a Lalafell or a Vieira, like you're not going to have Hures running around in the Vieira Glam, for example. So there is one thing left that still needs to be unrestricted. But for the most part, it's done. Also, they clarify, you clearly can't use like, you can't be on Dark Knight with your sword and use like an armor or hammer. Like your weapon, the weapon restriction, the job is tied to your weapon. So that still has to stay the same. But otherwise, you could be a paladin using the warrior AF. You could be a dark knight wearing that new stylish ass crafted gear that just came out in 7.3. Yeah, there's that. It's unrestricted. They did it. And you know what's funny? They very specifically said that they just made that post about the modding community a few weeks ago. And this is, it seems to be a response to that. People thought that maybe that was a reason why they did what they did before they were already working on this. And I think that actually is the case, but I think it's a little bit of both. So yeah, they definitely want it. And this is in patch 7.4. And immediately everyone went to asking about Glam Dresser space, because now people are going to want more spaces more than ever. I think more plates, more space, everything. So Yoshida went through a very quick, but tried not to get too technical about it, explanation about why things like this take a little bit more time. TARDIS housing was not in this, in case you didn't notice. They said they need until 7.5. Basically, the optimization is heavily revolved around CPU memorization and applying the slots that use the CPU to memorize it. Server engineers should be more knowledgeable in this one, so we will not provide too much information on this to prevent misinformation. But Yoshida went into a brief explanation. Iluna said they might translate the actual bit here to get the entire technical explanation out. But that is why the housing thing has taken so long. And that is why, yeah, I think a lot of people said they wanted this translation. So basically, they really want to focus on getting the housing stuff done. The TARDIS housing, more slots for housing. They said they were working on all of that. More like furnishing slots, I should say, at least for outdoors. And then they want to be able to work on plates, dresser, things like that. Now, they also randomly threw this bomb here at the end. We do want to increase public field content. That's in the future, though. Why did you just say that at that? Like, what? Do you mean overworld content? Do you mean like, you know, Fate's Hunts, like in that regard? Do you mean like the public field? Because we were just talking about housing. Are you talking about like things to do in the housing? Like, you can't just say that and walk away. That's what the. I would say do not think that is a promise of more overworld content in 8.0. I would definitely say against that, because if you tell yourself that's what it's going to be and it's not, people are going to come back and look at this exact sentence and go, but they said. We don't know what that means. Don't tell yourself it means one thing. Wonder what it means until they clarify in the future. I don't consider this a mic drop, or if it is, it's more like a oops, I dropped the mic kind of thing. Now, that was it for the actual content. The rest is the announcement section, which I'll go through. But something very interesting has happened. Blue Mage is not here, which means 7.5X now has the following. MSQ Part 1, MSQ Part 2, Hildibrand, maybe Allied Society quest, wouldn't surprise me. It is going to have a new trial, a new extreme trial, a new dungeon. It is going to have the Blue Mage level 90 update that they told us we were getting. It's going to have a Beastmaster. It's going to have Beastmaster, which was confirmed for 7.5X. It's going to have Ultimate, assuming they actually keep the schedule and get it out like they said they would. It's going to have the new Occult Crescent zone. It's going to have 6 new Phantom jobs in the new Occult Crescent zone. It is going to have the new Fort Tower Magic Normal and Savage, or whatever they decide to call it. It is going to have a Cosmic Exploration zone. And then it's probably going to have it's going to have a new Unreal too. And then we don't even know what else is going to be popping up in there. It's going to have a new Alliance raid as well. It's going to have the finale of the Final Fantasy XI Alliance raid. Can we not? Here's the thing. That sounds really exciting, because here's the thing. 7.5 to the expansion launch is the longest patch cycle. It's good to have some things that are kind of backloaded. But unfortunately, it's also kind of like half of what we talked about at FanFest leading into 7.0. And I don't think that's good. We can't wait till 7.5 to be getting things that we were talked about at FanFest a year and a half ago as I'm recording this. That's not a good look. You can't do that in the future. You can't like put the Blue Mage update, which you talked about at FanFest, Beastmaster, which you talked about at FanFest. Maybe there's another variant. The what's it called? The panel at FanFest said variant dungeons. There's an S at the end. which may imply another one in 7.5x, which would mean we wait until 7.4 for the first one, which is equally as not good of a look, and may get another one in 7.5x. Like, you can't delay, or you can't have all of that content go all the way until 7.5x. Like, you can't do that. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a second chaotic. Who knows, right? Like, it's just, yeah, it's, I don't know. But they can't do that. Really big piece of feedback from me. Going into 8.0, we have FanFest in April, our first one. In fact, a year from today is JP FanFest, the final FanFest before 8.0. Do not do that. Do not put a bunch of things in FanFest that will take 2 years to come out afterwards. It is very, very dehypifying from the announcements when we look at something knowing it is not happening anytime soon. So that is my one piece of feedback. Focus on your release schedule for 8.x and focus on advertising the things that players will experience within the first several months. Please. Please, please, please. Please. Okay. With that, don't forget about your ticket applications for FanFest. If you're going to North America, you have until November 2nd. If you're applying, if you're an active player and you're applying for that initial pool and not waiting for general sales, I will be doing my best to go, of course. We had a meeting about JP FanFest this morning too. It's a lot. It's going to be a big event. They also have the Eorzea Symphony with ticket applications now being available for that. The merchandise pre-orders are available in Japan. And that's pretty much it. And then Yoshi P says that he's going to be big on play testing going into 7.4, and that he's starting his like mass play testing era coming up. So yeah, they're not doing a 14-hour broadcast this year. It just doesn't work out. They have all the FanFest next year, so they are going to be focused on that. The space will be reserved for technical issues, and Yoshi P's reason why it took a lot of time to optimize the housing slots and limitation. Transcribe and translation will take quite a while. So bear that in mind. This will be a topic. If you're looking for that full explanation earlier, Aluna will be doing that because they got so many reactions, like hundreds and hundreds of reactions within like a minute or two of making that initial request. So, but they do this out of the kindness of their heart. This is unpaid labor right here. So give them time. And if you want that explanation, it'll be in the translations part of the Final Fantasy XIV Reddit Discord at some point. So that was a crazy live letter. Glam's being unrestricted, new themes, the entire expansion of the variant system, pieces of feedback that we have waited on for years, finally all being implemented. It's one of the first times I've come out of a part 1 live letter in probably the last over half a decade and not just been like, yeah, that was normal. No, it really wasn't. That was an incredibly abnormal and above average part 1 live letter where we don't get gameplay footage of everything. It wasn't perfect, mostly because of the actual schedule of things being a little weird still. But that was one of the best part 1 live letters that we've ever had, and I'm very excited for part 2 to actually get to see some of this stuff. New PvP, new variant dungeon, new cosmic exploration with a new mechanic with the archaeology, and Doom Train from Final Fantasy VIII popping up, and the new MSQ leaning towards the new stuff. There's a lot to look forward to, and I can't wait. So hopefully you are too. Let me know what you thought in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned. We will probably have a decent bit to say about some of this stuff in the coming days and weeks. But with that, I will see you in the next video. And until then, take care.